I am very excited to have Michelle Casper with me today. Michelle, it is we go way back. We'll start that.
We go way back.
And that it brings me more delight to have you on here because I have seen the growth that you've had personally and professionally, and I'm so excited to share your story. But let's start first with what you're doing right now because you did something crazy and started your own business.
I did. I did something crazy. I had to take lessons from all the amazing businesswomen that I knew before that point, you being one of them. And we go way back with our time with Navo. And thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I was just delighted when you reached out and had that moment where I was like, wait, why does she want to talk to me?
Well, truth
It.
be told, Michelle, you're like definitely one of my most favorite people. You are, just
Thank you.
incredibly giving, incredibly smart. I mean, you obviously paid attention enough to know, like, you know what, I can do this. So you're gutsy, and you have this wonderful family too. That at least from this side of the curtain, looks like everything is just going swimmingly. But we always, we always know the truth is behind the scenes, there's always a little more, which we may
Of
not necessarily
course.
get into.
Right.
But we'll just assume that that's the case. But let's back to you. So you started a business. What is it?
I did. So it's called the Retail Law Group. I started my own law practice. I've been a business attorney, mostly on the defense side. So representing businesses, small, large, everything in between, for about 20 years. And I started my own firm called the Retail Law Group. I really wanted to niche down into an area that I love. I work with a lot of institutional retail clients. So think like big box retailers, department stores, gas station chains, things like that, do a lot of their premises liability work. So that would be a situation where someone's injured in a store. I would come in and represent the business and its employees. But interspersed with that, over the course of, say, the last 10 years or so, were a lot of small to mid-sized businesses locally here in the Columbus market who needed legal services for a variety of reasons. And a lot of those were retail. They're selling a product. They're doing something in commerce. And it was increasingly difficult for me to service those clients within the infrastructure of a large law firm, in large part because our rates would make it not feasible for them. So there was always this disconnect. And I really saw a need and a desire to serve those types of clients and to not continue to have the conversation with the powers that be within a large law firm structure that we need to charge X number of dollars an hour to provide exceptional legal services. So I saw an ability to still provide exceptional legal services, but at a cost that was affordable and fair to not only my big clients, but also to the small to mid-sized business that need really exceptional legal services and a hand to hold them through that process. So that's sort of where the idea was born. And it was something that I was kind of thinking about for a while. And I got to this point in my mid 40s. I just turned 45. And I said to myself, if I don't do this now, I'm never going to do it. And then two, I'm always going to regret having not at least tried. So I'll never forget this. I was driving my daughter to a swim meet in Michigan, and I hadn't even told my husband that I had this plan to leave my current law firm. And I had always been in, mid to large size law firms and loved that environment. I think they do great work.
Oh my gosh, yes.
There is definitely a need for that, without a doubt. And, have fond memories of my time with the firms that I was at. But I decided to just research a bunch of podcasts of attorneys that have gone out on their own. So I listened to hours that week. I was at a swim meet, so you're sitting in the stands and, your child swims for like 30 seconds and then you're waiting for 3 hours. So I had all this time. And I had my phone and I'm, got my AirPods in and I'm just listening and I'm finding all these podcasts and I'm taking notes. And then a few of the podcast hosts, I've found them on Instagram and reached out to them and started having conversations.
Oh my goodness.
And I came home from that trip. My husband was back home with our son, Jack, and I came home and I said, hey, Mark, I'm going to start a law firm. Like, I think I really want to do this. Like, what do you think? And his response was, go for it. Just go and do it. And that was it. From that moment, like there was no turning back. It was just, he just said, this is what you're going to do. Go and do it. And then we started on the path.
There is
And
just
jumped
something
in.
so perfect about, and I have a similar story, something so perfect about when you throw your idea out there and somebody responds with such confidence in you that it's like, is it that obvious? Is it that obvious I should do this? Because if it is,
right?
then I am gonna totally go for it.
Yes. And it was just this unwavering support. And he's always been that way, and I'm grateful for that. But I think I just needed that validation of like, yes, you're gonna do this, and I'm not gonna let you like talk yourself out of it at all. And all these crazy things happened after where I could have easily talked myself out of it.
Sure.
You know, but it just, I just jumped in. And then once I got back to Columbus, there were a number of women who had left, you know, other similar large, mid to large law firms. And I reached out to them and I said, hey, can I just pick your brain? And I asked them all the questions. I was like, I'm not going to pretend that I know anything. Like, I know how to practice law in the area that I work in.
Right.
But other than
it's all that other stuff.
Nothing. I don't know anything. And that was really helpful too. That was helpful to just.
That's so fantastic. I remember when I heard, and my first reaction was, well, obviously
Oh my gosh, it's just wild to me.
Why not?
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
We've
Thank
been
you.
great at it, you know.
Thank
so
you.
that is so fantastic. When was it about retail that really kind of struck a chord with you?
Yeah, you know, that's really been the bread and butter of my work for the past 15 plus years. It's how I was trained as a litigator. It's how I was trained to be a trial attorney, was working with other retailers. And, you know, litigation is always that's the end game. Like, that's the spot that the business owner doesn't want to be in, because it means that there's a lawsuit. It means that you're going to court. Right. It means typically you're going to be spending a lot of money because trials are expensive. But I've always really enjoyed working with retailers and helping them craft that legal strategy, learning about their businesses. I think that's one of the most interesting things that I'm able to do in my work, is that I get to, like, you know, peel back the onion and really see like what's at the heart of the business, and what does that business owner love about their business? Like, what makes their brand special? Why are they in the marketplace? Like, why do they serve this role in commerce? Like, what really is exciting for them? And then also, you know, what keeps them up at night? Like, what are the problems that they need to be solved? And it's a different story for every retailer. And I really loved that. So when I thought about, you know, how do I structure this law firm? What do I want to make it? What do I call it? I was like, well, I mean, Casper Law seems just kind of boring. You know, I like my last name, but it just seems kind of boring. And I really wanted to speak to the type of customer that I wanted to attract for my business. So that's where the retail law group came out of. And I didn't find anyone else, certainly not in Ohio and even nationally, who was specifically tailored to work with retailers. And I thought that was an area that I could really niche down. And I do some work in other states as well. So it made sense.
Columbus, Ohio is a test market for many things. And retail is a big industry here. So it's odd that somebody isn't already doing this. So we'll keep that for quite a little bit. That's what always happens. It's like you get a great idea and then suddenly everybody's doing it. Right. But you heard it here first, that you were the first one that we're aware of that is doing this right now. I absolutely love that. I love that. And I love actually the name of your business, because it really does set you apart. It's very clear what you do. And sometimes being that, you know, finding that thing that is really different in your business isn't so obvious, you know, because people do name things after themselves, and that's there's absolutely no problem with that. But then you have to be really clear with the storytelling afterwards, so people kind of understand, you know, what is your niche, what is it that you do, and what are you trying to do, sort of thing. So I thought all of it was brilliant, well thought out and brilliant.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. So let's talk about little Michelle for a minute. When you were a little girl, what were some of the things that you kind of gravitated to that you just loved doing? Like, for example, when you would hop out of the bed in the morning, what was one of the first things that you wanted to do?
Oh gosh. I was thinking about this question last night when I was preparing. So I am the firstborn in my siblings and I. So I'm the oldest daughter.
Mm,
Two younger girls, and there's something about being the oldest. So rule follower.
yes.
I mean, rule follower like to my core, and I was always that way growing up. And I also I was kind of quieter, introspective. I loved reading. I absolutely
Hmm.
loved reading. Like I couldn't get enough books. I loved stories. I loved immersing myself in a story that somebody else wrote and just like having that world kind of come around me. And I really enjoyed being by myself as a kid. Being a firstborn, like a little dorky, like when I was growing up. I have some kind of crazy stories about things that maybe exemplified the dorkiness when I and this is a great one. I went to a Christian school up until 5th grade, and like 2 weeks before 6th grade was about to start, I went to my parents and I said, I don't want to go to this school anymore. Everybody's cliquey. It's really small. I'm not cool. I don't want to be cool. I don't care about that stuff. Like, I just want to go to a bigger school where I can just kind of like, meld in and I can find my little group. So they switched me to the public school, which was like a big deal. This was going from, a class of like 12 kids to probably 50. And I had braces at the time. So,
Oh.
and I also had a headgear, which was even better. Like the big metal thing, and it like
Oh my
strapped around my
God.
head. And my teeth were so jacked up that I had to wear it like often
All the
during the
time.
day. So my mom sent me to school with the headgear. And like I can remember the classroom. This is when I first started middle school. And she didn't do it to be mean or anything. She's a wonderful, amazing
Yeah, but
mother.
you're supposed to wear it.
She was a rule follower too. So I wore this headgear to school, and I think I only wore it for about a week. But it just, it set the tone for my life where I just really didn't care what anybody thought, and I could just be as ridiculous as possible. And it was like, whatever, they're not going to remember me in 2 months anyway, and it's middle school, so who cares?
Right. I mean, there'll be something else that's going to get their attention, in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. But I was a really quiet kid. Like I just had a small group of friends. I loved reading. I loved writing. I really do even enjoy writing to this day. And I loved being in nature. We, lived on a street where at the very end of it was this big nature preserve. And, back then parents would just send their kid, like, just go and explore
Yep.
and have a blast. And I would just wander in this nature area and like, make bowls out of mud and things like that. So
Right, right.
I just loved that kind of stuff.
That's
Yeah.
very cool. And making bowls out of mud is a nice segue to what you're doing now. Actually, it's not.
Right? Can you imagine? Oh, I know.
Um,
How did we get to
but
be
I'm
more?
gonna just jump back. I'm gonna just jump back a little because what I really enjoyed hearing is how much you liked reading and writing, because that
Yeah,
that does, you know you do a lot of that
I
now.
do.
You still have to
I
do a
do.
lot of reading and writing, and there's a lot of this discovery and this
Yeah,
magic and figuring out the stories that happen in some of these situations. So I mean, I definitely can tell that you're also a very curious person too. So a lot of that is just kind of like digging into those details and
yes,
asking those questions and things like that. So, but going back
absolutely.
to the mud bowls. One of the things that occurred, because I do follow you on Instagram and things like that, and every once
Yeah.
in a while you'll post these masterpiece cakes that you make,
Oh my gosh.
and that's why I was like, why haven't I had her on this podcast sooner? Because I mean, lawyer, cake decorator. I mean, it is the most beautiful
Yes.
left brain, right brain matchup, and especially if you're as good as in litigation as you are at decorating cakes, then you
Thank
are
you.
just the full package. So,
Thank you.
so let's talk about that a little bit, because clearly you did like making things. You did like,
I do. Yes.
and there was a little bit of storytelling actually too, and decorating cakes too, because I love doing it. Not as, I mean, I can't do it as well as you, but there's just something just
You could
very,
learn, I
very fun
promise.
about it.
Yeah, I know. I bet you thought that I was going to come on here and say that I like baked cakes as a kid. and just had this passion. And I didn't bake a single cake. I mean, I'd have to ask my mom. I don't think I baked a cake when I was a kid. And it just kind of started after I had kids. And I was always like, I liked arts and crafts, but I wasn't an artist. Like, I can't paint like you can. I can't, draw a portrait. I can't play an instrument to save my life, though I had to in middle school, the clarinet. But after I had children, it was a couple of years in, it was when my son was born, I believe it was his second birthday. And I was like, I'm just going to try to make a cake. And it was really simple. It was a chocolate cake. It was round. It was bright blue because his theme was the Cookie Monster. And I used fondant, which I didn't know that you could buy fondant at that time. So that's like a moldable type of material. So I made it out of marshmallows. Yes, because I didn't know. And then, the whole work smarter, not harder came into my mind, and I realized I could buy the fondant. But it was a very basic cake, and I remember it just had blue frosting on it, and then like the Cookie Monster cut out and his big smiling mouth, and that was it, just flat. But that kind of started the passion with it, and my son loved it so much. Like I got to show him this cake and his eyes are really big. And then every year after that I have a daughter and a son. For my daughter and son's birthdays, I would bake them a cake, and they just got more, elaborate, advanced as I went on. And I never took a class. I just watched a ton of YouTube videos of really masterful cake decorators who would take you through how to do it. I read a lot about it. It was trial and error. And I think like with anything in life, the more that you have deliberate practice for something, the better you're going to get at it. And the first is not going to look like the last. And it's just like that tinkering with it and learning. And like, I remember the first time that I covered a cake with fondant, because that creates like a nice smooth surface, and then you can decorate it from there. And I mean, I was sweating, like just rolling it out. I'm like, is it going to, and it tore in a couple of places. So I just kind of patched it up, and I got better as time went on. But that is such a joy. And my kids don't see the cakes before I reveal them to them, which is also just such a joy. And I love it so much, covering their eyes and like leading them into the kitchen and then showing them the cake, and their eyes get real big. It's just such a treasure. And I hope I can do it for their entire lives. Truly.
I think,
just love it.
It's one of those things I think that will be with them forever, which we always kind of want to have them some sort of memory of us, into the future. Yeah. But I'm sure that they will be telling their children, yeah, my mom used to make these most amazing cakes. And I think I would have some photos of them,
yes.
So, I mean, I think that is just such a beautiful part of childhood, and it's something that you made yourself as well, which is, rather than a store-bought one or something like that too. There's just something just so incredibly sweet about that. But one of the things that really I liked following it as well too, because I like the big reveals too. I'm like, oh, here comes the cake, because you would sometimes set it up too, where it was like, oh, here we go, we're making it. Stay tuned to see what it turns out. I was all in. And I love that you just kept challenging yourself on that too. It wasn't just you didn't necessarily just phone it in. You're like, okay, this is what I want to do.
Oh. And now,
how am I going to do this?
Now it's a thing. So like now I can't go back. My kids are 13 and 11, and I'm like, I can't. There are phenomenal cake bakers in the Columbus area that do this for a living, and people always ask me that. They're like, when are you going to open up a bakery? And I'm like, I haven't figured out how to be both a lawyer and a cake baker, so I haven't yet figured that out. And I just enjoy it.
Too, your art is just for yourself or for your family. It doesn't. I don't want it to be for everybody, because then it becomes a business, and then it stops being fun. There are many people who have started businesses based on a real passion of theirs, and then it turns into something that you're like, this isn't even fun anymore.
Yes.
And then so then what's the joy in that?
Right.
So it's like, no, this is just something I do for my family, and then maybe I would charge a few $100s if somebody asked me, but really it's just for my family.
Yes, and that's what I love most about it. And it's just a couple cakes a year, and like maybe for a, if extended family's coming down, I'll make them
Right,
a
right.
cake. But it just, yeah, I love it. And just thinking of what's the theme going to be the next year. And birthdays, especially when our kids were little, were always really special, intimate moments just for our family. Like we never
Mhm.
really did the big like friend birthday until
Right,
they got
right.
older. And there's just something so special about that. And we would, decorate the house and kind of go all out. And it would just be the four of us, but we loved it. And it just, those memories are something that are just so treasured and
Yeah,
special.
it's incredibly precious. And we did
Yeah.
like one or two, maybe, yeah, one or two parties with my daughter with friends and things like that. And yeah,
Yeah.
it's just those intimate ones that were just for whatever reason more memorable. The other ones just were kind of like chaos and,
Total
you know,
chaos.
too much
Madness.
stress. And even for my daughter, she was
Oh, yeah.
just, it's just like, this is just too much. So she's
Yeah.
definitely the more of that, let's just have a quiet birthday sort of
Yes.
thing. Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah.
I think that's just incredible. And the one thing too that I'm going to kind of footnote just for people listening too is just, again, just a difference in this and that you have a job that you love doing, but
Mm.
you have this outlet that is incredibly creative and that, if anything else, recharges you to go back to the job
Yes.
and get that left brain going again and just say, okay, I'm going to dig into this because I know I'm going to have this other outlet. And that outlet is not, and I don't know this about you, but that outlet is not like a glass of wine and Desperate Housewives, which is also an outlet,
It is an
but
outlet.
this, but this is better.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. No, it
The
just,
science of it is you just need to unplug your left side. And that's where a
yeah.
lot of people go is like just binge watching TV and having a drink, which is, like I said, it's a great quick fix. But I love
Yeah.
it when people have found something that is just so incredibly different and special and creative, because that's really what our brain wants. That's what our emotions want. That's what everything wants. So
Yes. Let's
I
all
love it.
the noise kind of shut down, and you just get to be in that moment, and it's really fun. It really
I
is.
love it. I
Yeah.
love it, and I love what you do with your work, and I and with your
Yeah.
cakes. I mean, you're just like I said, you're just like a whole woman.
Thank you. Thank you. That means so much. Oh, that's such a compliment. Thank you.
And just quickly, like what sort of things do you have coming up that with your business that you're kind of excited about, or I mean, you have like
Yeah.
it's because now you're looking at it from a different perspective as the owner.
I am. I know. And that, that really is a shift, because before it was just, okay, here are the cases that are in front of you. Here are the clients that are in front of you. But now it's about, how do we frame this business into something that I want? How do I look at it as being a different type of law firm? And that's another reason why I really wanted to branch out on my own. Not that, larger companies do it wrong. I don't think that at all. But
Hmm.
I just think that there's a space for running a law firm in maybe a different way than the traditional setting, and kind of marrying we can do great legal work and we can have this outside life too. Like I am not a slave to the office. I work very, very hard, but I also recognize the importance of having time for family, having time for self, being able to do all of those things and do them well, because if all the other buckets are depleted, like the bucket here is not going to be the best that it can be. And I think it's exciting to just figure out what that vision is. I mean, I am so new into this process. I launched my firm at the beginning of March of this year. So we're not even a year in at this point. And I brought on a paralegal, and I hired some of the right people to help with, the infrastructure and the back end of the business. And it's really just developing more of who's that ideal client? How do I get my name out there? I have great clients right now, great institutional clients that, serve as the bread and butter of the work, but then branching out into the Columbus market more in a way that I perhaps wasn't able to do being in a larger firm, because a lot of times the fees were an impediment, and it was having this tough conversation where, I don't think that the client should have to pay this amount of money per hour. And then on the flip side, having the conversation with firm leadership, well, we can't make those numbers work, which in a large law firm structure, the infrastructure is just expensive. It's
Exactly.
not as
Exactly.
expensive for me. So I think, moving forward, I'm excited about that. I'm excited to continue to grow the business, to develop it, to get to the point where I can bring on some additional attorneys and really, create that culture that I felt was missing in a large law firm setting, and just have it be something that's inspiring and different.
Yeah.
But in
And
the immediate, go ahead.
oh, go ahead.
No. Go ahead. I was just rambling.
Just to talk about large firms, large organizations and things like that. I mean, I worked for them for a number of years as well.
Right.
And
Yeah.
just to let people know, there is no better place to get a master's degree in business, or how to do things, or how to find what you're really good at.
Yes.
And so kudos to the people that take us on.
Yes.
knowing that we were just too wily to stay.
Right.
But I've also worked with large firms, large law firms and things like that. And it was because the need was there. So, I mean, we're not disenfranchising them in any sort of way.
No, not at all.
Or any corporation, because I'm just huge cheerleaders of them all. And I believe you are saying the exact same thing. But I love that when we find something that we love, we can actually, deliver it to people in a different sort of way, have a different option. And honestly, too, I love it because those partnerships also develop where you might have a client that you're like, you know what, you really need to talk to a larger law firm, and you could, share that. And if the large law firm is in a situation where they're like, you know what, we're out of price range for you, but Michelle can do a great job for you for what you need. So it's all about those mentorships, those relationships, and things like that too. So it's all exciting.
It is. And just to that point too, I mean, all of, like, when we think about the biggest firms in the Columbus market, for example, or in Ohio, I mean, they all started out really small. The first firm that I was at started with a group of probably 5 attorneys that had left a bigger firm to start something new. And then they grew. Now they're over 200 attorneys. Now they have a presence here in Columbus. And it's like, people sometimes forget those stories. And I think they're so inspirational, because they all grew. And now just the things that they can do, and the reach that they can provide in the community, the social impact, that the give back that they can do, it's really transformational for communities.
Well, hopefully with this podcast, people will now know more about you, because like you said, you just started, and we'll just kind of get the word out in this retail community that you are available. And I'm just very excited for you. I think this is a great next chapter for you. And I thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Catherine. It was great being here. Thanks so much.